20th century technology meets age-old brawn and muscle in this scene from India as thousands of workmen labor with their bare hands to build a hydroelectric dam, a modern marvel that will irrigate their land and generate power for their factories. In many parts of the underdeveloped world, people are making almost superhuman efforts to bring themselves the benefits of the 20th century and build a fuller life for themselves and their children. But when we turn to already developed parts of the world, we find young people showing acute dissatisfaction with what's been achieved in the world they live in. During the past decade, they've shown this dissatisfaction in increasingly violent ways. Often the police have responded with extreme actions to contain the disorders threatened by large numbers of militants. This demonstration in London was organized as a protest against the Vietnam conflict, but its practical result was a running battle with the police. It may have released the pent-up feelings of the young, but it did little to further their declared political aims. Another advanced industrial nation, another violent clash between students and police, this time in Tokyo. These youngsters took over a university building and braved tear gas and water cannons to dramatize their political demands. Remarkable for so many post-war achievements, the Japanese have also gained an unenviable reputation for clashes like this, among the most violent in a decade of violence. Paris, 1968, scene of student troubles which grew into an uprising that almost toppled the Fifth Republic. As revolutionary fervor grew, the student leaders called the country's whole way of life into question. The workers did not heed the students' call to join them on the barricades, but even so, the street battles were hard and bitter. Police and security men resorted to levels of violence rarely seen except in time of war. When the students left the Sorbonne after occupying it for 5 weeks, they were shown little mercy. But despite these extreme measures, the Paris troubles were basically very much like student riots in other parts of the world. Whatever the political pretext, the practical result is the same, a fight with the police. The students left behind them a typical armory of student revolt. But since then, the heat's gone out of the young revolutionaries. Universities, which had been in constant turmoil, have now been quiet for months. The United States experienced a similar decade of violence and an equally sudden change. The end of 1969 saw a very different event, the massive but peaceful demonstration known as the Vietnam Moratorium. In place of the rioting that had disrupted the universities, thousands of the nation's young gathered to demonstrate the power of peace. And suddenly, in place of hostility and prejudice, they found a large measure of support among their elders. There was plenty of shouting, but almost nobody hit anyone.
Okay, win! No! Win!
The V sign of peace predominated over the clenched fist of hatred and violence. That night there was a solemn and to many a deeply moving ceremony. Thousands marched by candlelight, carrying cards which bore the names of Americans killed in Vietnam. When they reached the capital, they placed the cards in waiting coffins. The gesture made a deep impression on a nation and a world weary of student violence. Beat music, deliberately distorted to numb the ears, and psychedelic lights to dazzle and trick the eyes. Many young people choose these as their means of protest against the society around them. The more powerful the impact on the senses, it seems, the more it serves to shut out the unwelcome problems of everyday life. Taking their rejection of society a stage further, other young people become hippies, creating a subculture of their own, based on the idea of communal living. Probably few will spend all their lives as hippies, but for the young, it seems an escape, a liberation from the restraints and the problems of modern living. Like the revolutionary student, the hippie acts out his rejection of normal life in a dramatic form. Rock music is a basic ingredient of the hippie life. So too are drugs. By taking drugs, the hippies hope to find a mystical sense lacking in ordinary experience. This hippie love-in in Central Park, New York, had most of the ingredients of the dropout's life, including flowers to symbolize peace. But flowers wither, and peace seems no nearer because of the hippies. Here's a young man who left home for a different reason. He gets his satisfaction and sense of fulfillment from helping people in a less developed part of the world to improve their lot. He went to the Indian subcontinent to aid villagers in a backward area build houses and schools and improve their standard of living by better farming methods. He may sometimes get a laugh for his attempts to bridge the gap between the cultures, but it's friendly laughter, free from suspicion and hostility. What this young man is doing is less likely to hit the headlines than the demonstrators and the hippies, but obscure as it may be, it gives him the satisfaction he needs. He's doing his own thing. Most poultry management experts don't have to catch their own chickens. But the effort seems, to this young man at least, more worthwhile than chasing the police or pursuing the dreams of the hippie life. This for him is the real world, a life that brings him face to face with the basic problems of existence. Restless young people manage to travel to some of the most obscure places to find personal fulfillment. Even here in the dense jungle of Bolivia, youngsters are lending a hand to villagers who've been encouraged to leave the poverty of the mountains and build a new and more prosperous village. And in this environment of hard labor, where the struggle for survival is present and immediate, this girl finds a life which is hard, but also real. Like the students and the hippies in their different ways, she's been searching for a reality which she can live with, cope with, and understand. In her comfortable home in the industrialized world, life is complex and often confusing. Here, though it's tougher, it's more straightforward. The problems are easier to grasp. They're the fundamentals of life. Work or die, build or be overrun by nature, create or be destroyed. Perhaps only the most adventurous of young people travel this far in search of reality. But a recent poll among British teenagers showed that 2 in 3 felt, to some extent, the desire to devote a year to voluntary work. The pity is, so much youthful energy runs to waste because too few organizations exist to tap it. China's Chairman Mao understood this when he founded the Red Guards. But the role he set them was one of destruction, the deliberate rooting out of China's ancient culture. It was a most effective, but in many people's eyes, a most questionable use of the idealism and enthusiasm of the young. In the underdeveloped world, it's the children who have most to gain or lose. These, at any rate, will be able to enjoy a richer, fuller and healthier life than their parents have had. But as they grow up, how will they react to their newfound opportunities? Will they value them, or will they, like some of their cousins in the wealthy nations, turn against them in violence and spite? Will they grow into builders or into destroyers?